Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, our fishery, and I have talked about this before, but I think it's important for us to think about this because I know there's pros and cons out there as far as people looking at the tournaments we brought. A lot of times people don't realize that the tournaments have a huge potential of helping us be more economically uplifted in this area. But it also, we see it sometimes as a threat to our fishery. And that brings up, I think, a point that I think it's awfully important to think about. Most of our fishery here in this wonderful area, this wonderful fishery that we have, is natural. The state doesn't stock most of these fish that we have in this area. It does stock trout, and that's a whole different thing. That is almost intended to be a put and take fishery. But for everything else, the smallmouth bass in the St. Lawrence River, they aren't stocked in there. The walleyes that we have, in most all cases through the years, have not been stocked here. There's a huge walleye, basically fishery in Oneida Lake and a hatchery there that provides walleyes to all different parts of our state, but not up here. We don't have, of course, northern pike being stocked. We don't have muskies being stocked here. And yet every other part of New York State, primarily the muskie fisheries that exist, are supported by stocking. And it's pretty amazing that we have this kind of fishery. So I think it's important that we realize that the maintenance, the sustenance programs of the DEC and of us, the fishermen, become even more important. And don't think that these fisheries can last forever, because they can't. There's other factors that we may have no influence over. All of a sudden, the invasion of an invasive species to the area that didn't exist here before can completely upset the fishery and the food balance. A disease that can come in and wipe out a whole population of fish. This almost happened years ago in the St. Lawrence. One day people started looking out there in that clear water and seeing monster muskies laying on the bottom. And bass were affected. Even something that it comes and goes, we have been able to keep it at bay, is the lamprey conditions in our waters. My goodness, the lampreys in Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River for years were almost out of control. They became out of control in Lake Champlain, and it took New York State, Vermont, and Quebec, all of them agreeing to a certain program of lampricide in some of the streams where these lampreys would go to reproduce, to knock down that problem. It can always come back, and we have to be aware of all these things. So that's why I think it's really important. I was recently studying about one of our hatcheries in this area that we should really be proud of, and that's a hatchery in Chateauguay. And at that hatchery, they take lake trout eggs that are collected from Racket Lake, and then they rear them and restock those lake trout in some of the lakes in the Adirondacks. They also they stock other trout and they raise other trout, but they also raise a special brook trout that is only intended for the Adirondacks. This brook trout is sort of it's a bonding or spawning of brook trout called Temiskaming brook trout from Canada with natural brook trout from New York State. And what happens is, what they end up with is a brook trout that is far more resistant to the acid rain that is in the high peaks area of the Adirondack. Most of the Adirondack lakes have been affected by acid rain, and so have the trout and the fish in there. So this strain of brook trout becomes far more able to survive in the Adirondacks. It's interesting what some of these hatcheries do, and it's very interesting that we have a hatchery right near us that plays such a vital role in our fishery. But by and large, our fishery here is natural, and it has continued to be, and with the help of all of us taking sort of a greater role in conservation, we can keep this fishery to be the best in the world. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.